Clay, before we get into our breakdown of Unauthorized Cinnamon on the Something Pretty podcast, said super clearly for all that search SEO that's done verbally nowadays. Do you have any allergies to anything?
Dust.
Which is what is that?
Ironic because my house is just
a museum, a clean museum.
Yeah.
You're allergic to the mites, right? You're not allergic. If you actually are allergic to dust, you're like allergic to the mites or something.
Yeah.
The shits that the mites are just spreading all over you while you sleep.
Pretty much.
Everything like that. Yep.
Yeah, I can't. I think I've got I have the usual like ragweed, all that kind of bullshit.
Oh yeah, like seasonal allergies. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that I was allergic to. I was told years ago I was allergic to cats.
Yep.
And then the most recent time that I did an allergy test, it said I was not allergic to cats, which made me very upset because it was always a great excuse not to have to interact with cats.
Yeah. My mother-in-law is allergic to cats, and we can't have. But I would like. I'm no great fan of cats, but I would like in my perfect world, I'd have a little independent cat that shit outside and then came inside and chased the mice away from the house.
Yes,
that would be an ideal version of a cat, but I don't know if we're going to get there.
They would it would chase the mice around and then bring their carcasses in and leave them on your bed.
That's fine. Put them on little tiny crucifixes to show the other mice that no one comes in here. Mice. Fair. I wouldn't say we have a mice problem, but you certainly run into a mice every once in a while. And our neighbors say they don't have mice and they don't have rabbits in the yard eating their flowers either, and it's because they have a cat that goes outside and
borrow their cat.
I know. Yeah, I should just hire him. He can become my Silas Adams. He can just journey over to my house and join my entourage. So this is Unauthorized Cinnamon, what we are about to break down. You're not allergic to any spices then, I guess, Clay? You don't have
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of, yeah.
No, I don't. Excuse me, yawning. I don't think I have any food allergies. I think I would have a panic attack if I had a food allergy that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Because I would act exactly the same way Harry acts, where I think I'm actively dying.
Yeah. My youngest is allergic to eggs and sesame. The eggs allergy has gone away, and now he's only allergic to sesame.
Interesting.
But that's kind of going away too. Hopefully he grows out of it so we can all have store-bought hummus again.
I was this is riveting podcasting.
Yep.
But I had when I was in Scotland, I had that I got some chips, as they say.
Yep.
Chips. And I got what's that brown shit that they put on it?
Brown sauce.
The malt.
They just call it brown sauce. Oh, the
malt something.
Not malt vinegar?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. Whatever they have it in packets.
They usually put salt and vinegar on their chips is like the usual with brown sauce sometimes.
It was in the condiments section. There was ketchup and then there was whatever this brown shit was.
Sure.
And I think it's malt vinegar or something.
Yeah.
And I tried that and then my whole face instantly got very hot. So I might have had an allergy to that.
No, I like I like the vinegar on the chips. It's a good thing. Fish and chips, the greatest invention that Britain ever had outside of America.
Yeah, so, they really stopped there with their food.
They did,
didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It's funny how some cultures don't do food. I mean, I guess America just kind of takes everything on, but it's like have you ever had a good Mexican dessert? It's not possible. They don't make desserts.
Interesting. Well, the churro.
I don't think it's good. Like that's not.
I mean, I've never sought out a churro. I know some people have, and some that if you get a good one, it's a good one.
Yeah.
But it's literally the only Mexican dessert I've ever heard anybody talk about.
Yeah.
At least anybody around here.
No, some cultures just can't do it. It's for what it is. They don't focus on those things. But if you want, you want spicy food, you don't go to Britain unless they import their food. Then you go to Mexico and you get a nice hot sauce on your burrito.
I appreciate Mexican food because it's the same 5 ingredients prepared 700 different ways.
Different shapes. Yeah, different shapes of things, which is good. I think I haven't talked about it. The burrito is my least favorite food just because of how utilitarian it is. It's like if you just want a bunch of nutrition, you eat a burrito. It doesn't. I never enjoyed eating a burrito.
I thought you would like the burrito because of how efficient it is.
I like the efficiency, but I'm not sitting down and I don't enjoy burritos. I'm not going like, wow, this is a great thing. It's just an efficient way to get.
Well,
nutrition.
you got to find a place that makes it. Well, there's a place by me in college that would bake them.
Yeah,
and
the little crunch.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
and it's different than a chimichanga, which I just recently discovered in like the last year or two, and I wish I hadn't because they're fucking unbelievable. And it's like, imagine a burrito, which is bad enough for you as it is, and then you deep fry it. Yeah, it's great, excellent.
Well, I like empanadas because they're like that. Like it's you need the crunch. I think you're onto something. The sogginess of like a non-crispy burrito is just mush in your mouth. You're just chewing mush.
Yeah. Wait, hold on one second. And yep, the last listener is gone. We can talk about.
All right, let's move
Deadwood
on.
Now.
Let's move on to unauthorized cinnamon, which you won't find any cinnamon on burritos, so you're safe to eat in Mexico, Harry. We're going to take a break. We're going to play the music, the theme song. We're going to come back, and we're going to break down unauthorized cinnamon.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
This is episode 7 of the 3rd season of Deadwood. I almost said Star Trek Deadwood. Deadwood. This is called Unauthorized Cinnamon, directed by Mark Tinker, written by Regina Corrado. In this one, called Unauthorized Cinnamon, Aunt Lou's son Odell shows Hearst gold he says he brought from Liberia. A meeting of Deadwood's leaders is organized. Burns finds the doc too ill to join. Jewel decides to put out cinnamon with the peaches. Dan Doherty objects strenuously. Alma is back on dope. Trixie tells Star. Gustav the tailor offers Swearingen brightly colored fabric for his stump. Hearst voices his suspicions of Odell's story and his character. The topic of the meeting is how to handle Hearst in the killing of Pascoe. Swearingen says, quote, "My instincts to act alone chart course for the fucking carnage," end quote. Merrick prepares to publish a letter from Bullock to Pascoe's widow. Hearst confides in Odell that gold is every man's opportunity. Aunt Lou fears for her son's safety if he follows Hearst's instructions. Joni and Jane kiss. Swearingen gives the fabric to Cochrane to mask his tubercular cough. I don't think I've ever said tubercular before.
Tubercular.
Tubicurious, yeah.
If you had put that to music, that would have been a better remake of "We Didn't Start the Fire" than the one that Fall Out Boy did.
I still haven't heard that. I don't think.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the case. You know, I it's not really. What the hell was I? What's the big? Oh, never mind. Maybe I can't really segue this into anything. Is there a big song that's happened recently that has not gone? What's the biggest?
Could you be more specific?
What's the biggest hit right now? Is there a big hit that's out?
You are asking the wrong person.
No, maybe there's nothing. I think my mind is just going in different directions.
The Lindy Hop, is that current enough?
No.
That's about where I am in popular music.
The hell did? Never mind. Fuck it. Whatever. Forget about it. I was trying to figure out a way that I was just remembering the other day that I never thought that "This Is America" from Childish Gambino was going to last, and I think it's one of my great calls. Although I appreciated it for what it was, but I just never thought that song was going to last, and no one has listened to that song in 2 years or whatever. It's been 3 years.
Yeah, that's a tough one just to throw on at a party.
It's not a good song. It's like it doesn't. The video is everything.
Yeah, it's a whole like art piece, really.
Yeah, but the song is not. Doesn't have what it takes. Oh, I guess because it's the that Richmond, north of Richmond, is the big song that's out now, and I was wondering I was just trying to rank them. That has slightly more staying power than "This Is America," I think, but I don't think either one is particular.
I amazingly heard that song in the wild the other day, where someone pulled up to a red light outside my house and just had the windows down and was blaring that, and I was like, wow, that's an angry car ride right there.
It's a tough one to play in public just because of how popular it is, right? I just feel uncomfortable no matter what the content is. If you're just playing the super popular song,
and it's not like I don't know. It's kind of a downer, you know?
Yeah, it's not an uplifting tune.
Even the most angry, like, gangster rap, at least kind of, had a beat to it that was enjoyable. That's just that guy complaining for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I don't dislike that song, but it's it does the thing. I think it's too the lyrics are too direct in some cases. It doesn't have the metaphor kind of slips away, and it gets into, like, even though I like the line about being 500 pounds and on welfare eating fudge packets, which is funny, but it's way too specific to be an effective song. Yeah.
When that line came around, I was like, yeah, I think you're missing the mark here a bit.
Yeah, he ran out
of course, that's everybody who wants to make a point about that song. That's their favorite line. So.
Oh, is it really? I guess I'm not saying.
I don't know.
Because it's the weirdest one. It's the strangest line.
Yeah. It's the one where people like, look, he's directly taking a shot at people on welfare.
Yes. Yeah. Which, well, you should. Why are food stamps allowed to buy any? Am I wrong? Why can you buy weird stuff with food stamps? Shouldn't it be, like, limited? Is it limited?
I have no idea.
Well,
not a clue.
I know government cheese is a thing, but I thought that was just cheap. But I don't know, because people can buy soda, right? The scam is that they buy, like, soda and then they sell it, right?
Oh, I have no idea.
I think there's something like that. Anyway. Unauthorized Cinnamon. Here we are with what is considered to be one of the strongest episodes of Deadwood. All the reviews that I read praise this one quite heavily. From I think it's Emily St. James now at the AV Club, down to Zoller Seats, who did the Deadwood Bible that I'm reading, down to Seppenwall, all the big reviewers, TV reviewers. A lot of them were mentioning that this is one of their favorite episodes. So what say you about it, Clay? What did you think of Unauthorized Cinnamon?
Thank God the actors are back.
This is a letter. Who's the fucking letter to? What the fuck is going on?
Last of those Cornishmen murdered.
Pasco.
His family.
Read the letter. It becomes my painful duty to inform you that Pasco Carwin was killed earlier this week.
Your head out.
His body was found in the road.
Using the cinnamon, and Harry Manning's using it planet.
It was not mutilated in any way. His death seems to have been instantaneous, as he was stabbed through the heart. Pasco's funeral occurred today and was attended by co-workers and friends who all shared the same high opinion of him. Everything was done by kind hands that was possible under the circumstances, and a Christian burial was given him. I was not personally acquainted with Mr. Carwin, save for one encounter where he demonstrated grief and deep compassion at the passing of a friend. I knew him by reputation as an earnest worker and a diligent believer in right and wrong. His memory, I am sure, will always be with those who knew and loved him, among whose number I imagine you as first. A letter from you, which I found in his tent, causes me to convey this sad intelligence to you. Sincerely yours, Seth Bullock. What shall I do with this, Mr. Bullock?
What's your fucking paper for? You fucking publish as witness. For Hearst and others to read. That's a very nice fucking letter.
Oh, the troupe, not just all the actors in the show. Yeah, the troupe is back.
Not the SAG members. I'm talking about Brian Cox and his lovely band of bedridden actors.
I couldn't tell if you were just if you thought this was the acting dynamo episode by saying the actors are back. No, but what's the gay guy's name is Betancourt or something? He has some name like that, and then Custerfield, I think, is the sick guy who's dying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the troupe is back though.
I was when that scene happened, I was like, this really feels like they're checking a box storyline wise here, because I could not be more interested in whatever's going on with these guys.
Yeah,
and I feel like the show could not be less interested in what's going on with these guys.
Yeah, well, he fits in thematically, right? Like the point of this is like Deadwood's meditation on death. I think it's a bunch of different characters and different storylines having both like literal and metaphorical experiences with death. And everything revolves around that. I really like this episode too. It's a quieter episode than a lot of the other ones that people would kind of remember. But what I think it does is that I think the Deadwood Bible kind of sums it up. I'll just read from it for a second. So one of the qualities that distinguishes Deadwood is its eagerness to focus the story on an idea. This week it's something along the lines of mortality and attempts to thwart, stave off, or bargain with it without getting tangled in the barbed wire. Which character or object or situation equals death/loss? They all do. None of them do, and it's not as simple as that. Death is on everyone's mind as a simple fact of consciousness, as it would be on the minds of the Israelites marking door frames with the lamb's blood on the Passover night. And when we say death, we mean not a particular fate or specific purveyor of death, but an array of literal and non-literal iterations of death. There's almost fear that her addiction and depression have killed her marriage. Hearst's mounting fear that his dream of controlling Deadwood is sickening unto death. Aunt Lou's fear of her son's Odell's safety in a racist country, which led her to send him to Liberia. And her terror at the appearance in a camp where one black man was almost lynched and another blew his brains out because he couldn't stand the bigotry. Doc Cochran's death rattle cough, the white spots on the tongue of Langrisha's terminally ill mentor Chesterton, and the possibility that Hearst might assuage his embarrassment at being arrested and jailed like an everyday hooplehead by hiring another 25 gunmen and sending them on a murder spree. But I think, the third season is just reasserting itself as my favorite season. And I think that one of the points from the Deadwood Bible, whoever that guy was that said, like, this is the hangout season and it's the show recognizing that it's a hangout show, was dead on, because not a tremendous amount happens here, but I think like virtually every scene, maybe outside of the theater troupe, is interesting, good, like a funny mix of comedy, not comedy. I think that the Zolar Seats review marks it well, which is that like the show isn't desperate in its attempts to write character scenes to jam everybody perfectly to fit the theme of what they're talking about, but they all kind of touch on it in different ways. And I think that this is just the show's biggest statement yet about death and what death means and where the camp stands at this point in comparison to Hearst. But what say you? Did you like this one or not?
Yeah, I did. I think that that comparison is really interesting for a show that has so much death in it that they've never quite really meditated on it. Even here, like I think it's interesting that that analysis is accurate. And the most interesting thing about it is that it is not thematically in your face. It's not a straight up obvious 1-to-1 what the musings on death are.
Yep.
They're kind of through, like everything else in the show, they're kind of through a couple layers of obfuscation. But yeah, I thought it was really good. I think, man, I don't know. Did McRaney ever win an Emmy for this show? Because he's fucking incredible.
No,
like that scene with Odell is fantastic. When they're
the dinner scene.
Well, that one and the scene when they're walking and he has his.
He explains the gold is the great equalizer of people.
Yeah, and he talks about his own. The truth that I know, the necessities I'm prepared to bring make me an outcast, and he starts crying. He gets like emotional about it. It's really good.
Yep.
He's just this is a stupid nitpick, but he said the color so many times in that thing to the point where like it's starting to sound like if your friend just starts creates a new word for something everybody talks about all the time, and he's just really trying to make it happen.
It's his catchphrase.
Like, it's like, okay, all right, we get it. Gold.
Comes
Great.
on the back of the box. Although they get bring a little bit of confusion out, if I'm remembering it right, because I think Odell confuses it with like him saying as if he was saying colored people at that.
Yes. Yeah. But I thought that stuff was really good.
The McRaney scene at the end is funny. I like the. I've praised the performance and the character of every episode of the show so far, but the ending one is interesting because it's clearly everyone in the book describes like this is what Milch would do when he would bring an actress. He would walk around the set with them and like explain the way that Hearst is explaining to Odell like what the meaning of all of this is and why this would be the way that it is. And that Hearst speech strikes me as very much like it's just Milch writing his own sort of thoughts about it and having her say the lines, which is
it does feel like someone who's
statement.
Getting high on their own supply a little bit, going around, and he's like, nobody understands what's going on but me, and it drives me insane.
Yeah. It's
to the point where I'd rather just burn down the entire town.
Gomorrah on him.
Before the color, no white man, no man of any hue moved to civilize or improve a place like this had reason to make the effort. The color brought commerce here, and such order as has been attained.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to help Liberia, Odell?
I want to help myself. If Liberia is where my chance is, it's all right with me.
Gold is your chance.
Thank you, sir.
Gold is every man's opportunity. Why do I make that argument? Because every defect in a man and in others' way of taking him, our agreement that gold has value gives us power to rise above.
Fond as you are of my mother, without that gold I showed you, I don't expect we'd be out here talking.
That is correct. And for your effrontery at our meal a moment ago, I've seen you shot or hanged without a second thought. The value I gave the gold restrained me, you see. Your utility in connection to it. And because of my gold, those at the other tables deferred to my restraint. Gold confers power. Power comes to any man who has color.
Even if he's black.
That is our species' hope, that uniformly agreeing on its value, we organize to seek the color. Just before you and I met, Odell, the camp sheriff released me from a jail cell.
That's hard for me to feature.
I hate these places, Odell, because the truth that I know, the promise that I bring, the necessities I'm prepared to accept make me outcast. Isn't that foolish? Isn't that foolishness? An old man disabused long ago of certain yearnings and hopes as to how he would be held by his fellows. Yet I weep.
Hearst just continues to be like incredibly nuanced. You talked there about the ending, which is basically like they start him off in the dinner scene. He says that when he's talking about Aunt Lou when she's serving, he mentions to Odell that the problem with your mother is that she hasn't yet learned to not care what others think in society. Hearst says that because he's having dinner with a black man, which is like causing everyone else in the place to look at him kind of out of the side of their eyes.
I thought that was really excuse me. I thought that was a really good scene too, because they never straight out I feel like a lesser show would have had Odell make or Hearst make reference to the fact that everybody's staring at them because he's eating dinner with a black man.
Yeah.
But they just let the actors all kind of preparing to shoot him.
Yes,
do the work for them, you know?
I guess by not saying it, I think there might be a confusion that everyone in there is a Hearst bodyguard who's keeping an eye on Odell, which is not the case.
Oh yeah, I didn't read it that way.
Yeah, I think that's one way of seeing it. But no, it's really just it's Hearst.
As soon as EB pulled out a gun, I was like, "Oh, this is a racist thing."
He's got to handle. EB's locked and loaded. It's Hearst dancing to the beat of his own drum, which is what he's to do, which adds to his sort of interesting and mystique and everything. But at the end, he also brings it back up just by saying, as you were saying, that no one else in this town understands what he's trying to do, and it makes him an outcast, even though he believes he's doing the right thing. He has this sort of like Thanos moment, basically. But he also cries at the end of it, which is just further insight. Like it's along the lines of when Hearst would seem genuinely sad about Turner, too. It's that Hearst is an abstraction of the evils of sort of powerful capital coming in and what that could mean to things. But he's also he's not completely unfeeling, and he's not written as though he's like this complete alien of a character who has no sympathy whatsoever for anyone in the camp or any other people. Yeah. And it's a nice way to show that he sort of self-justifies his own decisions to hide his own anger at the way that his life has gone because of his myopic view on what he wants to accomplish and what he wants to get out of life has cost him things in other ways.
It did it did remind me slightly of the scene in The Big Lebowski where Lebowski calls the dude in and he starts crying and he's like, "Do my tears surprise you, sir? I too can cry." Dude, and the dude's just like, "Yeah, man, whatever."
Whatever it takes. No, you don't see.
The rug pissers did this, man?
What's that?
You think the rug pissers did this, man?
Hearst has, unless the rug, you would have put a hole in it, I think, in the first place. But yeah, Hearst's, I think it's a further clarification of Hearst. The dinner, Hearst has that thing that McRaney said in the book, the coffee table book, about Hearst sees things more clearly than other characters do. He sees right through the con that's being played on him almost immediately.
It's tough. It's basically the Nigerian prince scam.
Yeah,
it's kind of tough not to see through it. It's like, what did you expect me to do? Go to Liberia with, like, how did he expect this to play out?
Yeah, to be convinced of it by, you have a little bit of gold and you go over. I mean, it takes you a year and a half to confirm this with the way the travel was working back then. But I also think that, like, Hearst's interaction with Odell and the whole point of that speech about gold being an equalizer is, I find that to be a really interesting characterization of Hearst there, which is that he is not, he is racist in the way that everyone there is, and maybe he's even more racist when he sort of does this hierarchy of the races and who he wants to interact with them. But he has this overriding principle of he's not Steve the drunk racist. Like, he doesn't allow it to block him or blind him as to what he wants to actually accomplish. And he's not even racist because it fits in with the culture, because he doesn't care what other people think about what he does. It's a weird of his own strain of his own strain of ideology that powers him, and it's unique, I think, and he's different from a lot of the other characters in that way.
Yeah, I felt like his obsession with the gold, and I mean, maybe this was part of the intention of him throwing around the term the color, et cetera, et cetera. This is the first time where his obsession really felt like an obsession. Like there's something wrong with this man, because as he kept talking about it, and the way he talks about it, and what he's talking about in terms of what he's willing to do to the camp, and the idea that there might be gold in Liberia worth checking out. I just found myself thinking, like, what is he getting out of this? It feels like it's, it feels like such like a straight obsession that doesn't really benefit him in any real way or really bring him any pleasure. It's just a straight up obsession that he cannot stop.
No, I guess I feel in that ending scene, he sort of states what he wants. He has the line, he says, "Gold confers power, and power comes to any man who has the color." And I think that's what defines Hearst, is that Hearst is not interested in like the wealth or the materialism that is brought from having gold, but Hearst is very interested in, I see the world a certain kind of way, and I can make the world that way if I have enough gold, if I have enough power.
He really came off like Daniel Plainview here to me, like later years Daniel Plainview, when it's kind of like his obsession, it brought him to the point where you look at him and you go, okay, is all of this really worth it?
Yep.
You've got it. You've got it all. Now what?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he's entering his, I don't think the Thanos character in the movie is at least a very interesting character, but like here, he's entering that period where he's explaining the plot of what he wants, right? And he wants the power to do this change, and he wants to change the world or change the universe or whatever. but he's also he's at the point in whatever movie it is where Thanos is like, I've been doing this forever, but this is like, you've annoyed me so much that this is now personal and I'm going to enjoy destroying it. And that's kind of what Hearst is with the Deadwood town. He's been frustrated to the point where he's now emotional about it, and he's not particularly thinking as clearly as he was, and he's more hell-bent on destruction than his initial solution or like his initial goal was.
No longer just business. Now it's personal.
It's personal. Yeah. He's got to take the gun out of the suitcase and move on. And I think that's pretty much all that Hearst does in this one. What do you think of the Odell? What did you think of the Odell aspect of that?
I thought it was good. His whole thing still feels really random to me. But I did like his scene with his mom. Even though I was really on the fence about whether or not the woman who plays his mother was acting well in that scene, or if she was going too over the top, because she's hysterical to the point of it feels like bad acting. But in the back of my head, I was like, well, but I mean, she's hysterical, so who's to say what that looks like?
It's a reaction to death, right?
Right.
Odell is facing death with his con here. Like there's potentially a bad outcome for this, and I think she's the mother who's reacting to death in that situation. He has not died yet, but she knows from her experience with Hearst what is to be expected.
That's like to kill you is take passage with you to Liberia. His man you meeting in New York.
If Mr. Hearst wanted me killed, Mama, he could see it done here.
Don't you ever believe you know what to please that man. Assault him to come after you. And you look a fool holding that cigar.
I played one for smaller stakes. And the gold ain't playing. I ain't trying to steal nothing. I work my way up the hall. And ain't you sent me out there so I can turn out a man?
I sent you so the hell that was coming here for niggas wouldn't burn you up.
There's plenty of fire in Liberia.
I can't undo what I done, Odell, any more than you can searching out hurt.
I ain't searching no hurt out.
We all get our potion. We don't need to draw it to us.
You hear me, Mama? I ain't searching no goddamn hurt out.
I done told you to mind who you talking to.
All right, Mama. No bad language. If you kept me to raise me, maybe I'd know.
And I think what was really, really great about that scene is in her hysteria, you get the knowledge that she has been trying. She's basically been doing her best to, she thinks, protect her son, but her son is there to tell her that, there's basically the pendulum swung too far in the other direction, where she was actually being hurt by the fact that she was pushing him away. And, she said she wanted to, I can't remember what the exact line is about, they're keeping him away from the things burning down. And he's like, well, there's fire in Libya or Liberia as well. I thought that stuff was really good. Because, I mean, that's the fear of every parent, right? You go so hard trying to protect your kid, and you ultimately realize that your overprotectiveness has now put them in a different kind of danger.
Yeah, they don't, because they're going to never understand why you push them away like that, even with what was in her best or his best interest for her to do that. But he's back now and vengeful. And, as far as this plot, I think it fits just into what Deadwood is at this point, which is that there's not always an explanation as to the plot mechanics or like the pure reason as why someone like Odell would come back and do things. I draw the inference he's just doing it because he's trying to take revenge on the person who employs his mother is like the nearest proxy to get back at the forces that caused her to send him away in the first place.
Yeah.
And Hearst represents the great white powerful male who she's protecting him from.
Yeah, because he tells her that he had planned to do this without her even knowing he did it.
Right, yeah.
I forget why exactly that didn't happen, but he didn't get back.
Yeah, because he didn't. He thought she was staying at the Comstock, but was surprised that she got called by Hearst to Deadwood at that point. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and just move on to the other aspects of it, I guess. Like, any of the other storylines struck you as interesting? Some of them are more in depth at this point. Some of them are a little bit not throwaway, but smaller. The Janie and Joni scene where she takes a bath is kind of not a throwaway, but it's a very short scene. I think it's the only bit that you see of those two.
Yeah. Joni slept with her sisters?
Yeah, her father prostituted her with her sisters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I missed the part about the father, but did she bring that up in this episode?
No, it's been previous. She talks about why her father sold her to Cy after a while. Like the father was sleeping with all of them and making them be prostitutes, and then he sold her to Cy at some point.
Yeah, I like that scene. I thought that was the woman who plays Jane is amazing. Like another person who should have gotten an Emmy or something.
Robin Weigart, I think that's her name.
Yeah, the way that she like twitches after she kisses her is really good.
Yeah, well, scrub my fucking tits then.
Yeah, the way she the lady doth protest too much about not wanting her tits scrubbed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those two are a good pairing because they do both have this broken history of sexual violence, right? And so it makes sense for the two of them to kind of find each other and connect on a level that really nobody else in the cast can identify with.
Yeah, there's a female to female bond thing too, that because the men are the ones that have hurt them in this world, so it makes sense that they would find security with each other. Outside of that, they have the big meeting, which is kind of the linchpin. I guess we should talk about the meeting.
The one, just to cover a quick one that leads into that. The one scene I liked, it was very on the nose, but I enjoyed it because it was no one even thought to bring this up elsewhere in the show. Was when they just cut to the room with the whores, and one of them says, "I guess even if you have a pussy, even if you own a bank, you don't get invited to the meeting."
Yep.
And it's like it's on the nose, but I after they said that, I was like, "Wow, I hadn't even thought of that either." And none of the other characters even float the idea of should we invite Alma to this meeting?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I've seen the other outside of Alma, the other character I've seen brought up that it should be there is probably Wu. Should be there as well, but he's obviously excluded. But yeah, certainly the females are not allowed to attend this meeting. It is especially kind of a weird scene that they just jutted into to make sure you get the point. But it is, as you were saying, I appreciate the fact that they put it in there because it's not something you really notice or think about.
Guess if you got a pussy, even owning a bank don't get you to that table.
Right, and it's probably something we should notice, but it isn't for various reasons.
Well, because they had the meeting before she had the bank too, right? So this would be, you would think this would be a point where...
But even then, she's like, has the biggest money interest in the entire town.
Yeah.
Like they invite fucking... Well, he doesn't get invited, but he forces himself into the meeting. Steve is fucking there.
Yeah.
But Alma's not there.
Is Steve there in this latest meeting?
I believe so. That he has that whole. Does he end up not going?
Yeah, I think they tell him he can't go. Harry goes with Tom, and EB is there. I don't think Steve ends up going.
Oh, okay, he doesn't end up going. All right. Either way, I mean, on the one hand, you've got Steve.
Harry Manning being there is a strange choice to be there.
Yes, Harry being there is makes more sense. I think the Tom Nuttall's reasoning is more sound than Steve's is. But the fact that Steve thinks that he deserves to be there and Alma doesn't even ask is, I think, pretty sums it up pretty well.
Before we forget about him, it's I think it's an episode that focuses on the sadness of some unlikable characters. Hearst we talked about, but Steve the drunk has his pathetic "Will you still stay and work for me?" moment with the general, and gets shot down, and then just goes back to being his normal vile self, yelling about things. I find his line is very sad. Where he's like, "Don't try to fucking murder me in my sleep, and I will not murder you." it's his best way of sort of offering up an olive branch, I guess, to the general.
I did like when Harry, I think it was Harry, pulls drops the Lovecraftian hammer on him when he's like, are you so sure about your own ancestry? Because your nose looks kind of wide there.
Oh, yeah.
Steve is like, oh, no. It's the most horrible thing I could think of. Maybe I'm part black.
One of the reviews was saying that the show seems like it's building towards they reveal that they're distant cousins or something because they've had the same they have the same surname and they have a comparison of facial features, which is that
interesting.
That's I forget that character's name, but Ted Mann. It's the Ted Mann character. The writer Ted Mann plays that character.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. Okay, it wasn't Harry. Yeah, it's that guy who's only there to just stir shit with people.
Yeah, his name. He has like a last name. It's like Ferguson or something like that. Is his name. But yeah, the meeting is the big thing about this one. So the meeting I think is great. The meeting is the show talking about like what separates this town and the way that it's developed from the way that Hearst is. Hearst has explained what his point of view is, which is that he, the color is the most important thing. You do what you have to do to get it. It gives you power. Power gives you agency over everyone else, and no one else can control you. The town is the opposite of that, where you're trying to figure out how to deal with the Hearst threat. And it comes down to, just what I think is a really beautiful Deadwood thing, which is completely on track with what the show does and what I just kind of talked about a minute ago, which is that no one is really sure if they've come up with a solution to something.
Right.
They know that the letter makes them feel a certain way, and they feel that it's a response to Hearst, but no one can actually verbalize what they think they've accomplished or why they think this is going to do anything down the line. And Deadwood does that all the time. It's not very clear, or it doesn't want to say what it thinks is happening, or it might not even have a strong point of view about what it thinks that the right outcome here is going to be, or why these things mean anything. It's just a commentary on the shared moment of the death of Pascoe, and reading the letter that Bullock had written to the widow reminds everyone about the sort of communal bond that's been formed in the town. And Hearst doesn't understand any of that. And if they lose this and Hearst actually manages to succeed in burning down the town, the only thing that they have against him at that point is the fact that they have a bond and a love for each other that Hearst can never understand and never share with them. Another show would have just had they hatch the Ocean's 11 plot in this meeting, and it's like,
right,
we're going to go off and do that. And it just ends so unsatisfying, but still satisfying in the same way. It perfectly encapsulates things.
Yeah. I thought that was really funny because even in the show, they go out of their way to have scenes where people are like, so how was the meeting? What'd you guys decide? And whoever is being asked the question is like, well, we read a really nice letter. And it went well. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm really not sure.
The Swearingen scene with Langrish at the end is funny too. He's like, I don't even know what the fuck. I read that. We read that letter. But I like Swearingen too after they read the letter. And Swearingen has the line. He's like, that's a really fucking nice letter, Bullock.
Yeah. He had some really good, I don't know if deadpan is the right word, but when the guy comes in with all the swatches and then Johnny knocks on the door and he just goes, Jesus Christ, come in, or something like that. For the love of God, come in.
Come in. Yeah. Whoever's out there, for the love of God, come in. Yeah. Yeah, the swatches is a funny scene. That actor is a old NYPD Blue favorite of Milch, so I guess that's why he's involved in this.
Oh, is
one.
he? He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the town, assembling. I think that they have things like Cy is back and talking here. There's a kind of renewed idea that Cy is turning against Hearst in some ways, implied in this episode.
Yeah, he is the one who voices that even he is concerned because he brought Hearst some primo knowledge about Alma, and he did not care. He was only concerned with Bullock.
Yep. Yeah. So there's about whether or not they need to hand over Bullock to it.
I give him a foolproof fucking approach to wind up at that woman's claim. I could have been shit drawing flies. Hearst is that fucking focused on Bullock pulling his ear.
Yeah.
All collected but Doc.
Where the fuck is he?
Ain't up to it, he says. Cinnamon's out for the peaches.
Huh?
That wasn't my fucking doing.
Giving Hearst bullocks the only move that don't end with a camp in flames. And that one only gets us up to 50-50.
Yeah, it represents, literally the thing that's hanging over everything is Hearst, as he says, wants to go all Gomorrah on the town and destroy it. He does this thing where he's ordered 25 bricks, which Blazanov betrays his oath to secrecy and tells the town about, which means that Hearst is hiring guns to come into the town. But yeah, it's just the death of the town is on everyone's mind. And I think that the episode itself is just showing how different people react to that information and whether they do things and how people go about it. We had a death of a family that I grew up with. Their youngest child died.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks. And we had the wake, and I think that it was just on my mind because I think that the Deadwood episode captures how shockingly different the reaction of death is to people, right? Like, so in the sort of like the greeting line at the wake when you go up and give your condolences to the family, like the mother was obviously understandably much like the Aunt Lou character in this, but as you're moving down the line, some of the siblings of the deceased, like one made a joke to me there, and it's like you're in a weird spot where there's like all different kinds of things going on and all different kinds of ways of people dealing with what is obviously a terrible and tragic situation for them. But the person who gives the pastor or whatever, the priest or whatever, who gives the speech is one thing. There's the conversations afterwards, which are another thing. There's the no one can really understand anything that's, if you're not directly affected by it to the way that the family is, it's very difficult to understand where you're going or like what you're supposed to do. And I feel that this Deadwood episode just kind of captures that energy that's at the wake like that, which is that some are depressed, some are looking for something else, some are concerned about thinking about other people and how it's going to, sort of transposing their thoughts from one person onto another. And I think that that's why this episode's kind of regarded so highly, is it handles a lot of different character interactions with very different opinions about what they all think about what you could say is just the symbol of life and death. But it's neat. I think it has a lot of great scenes in it, and I think that the show settles in a place that's kind of interesting and anti-Hearst, really, which is, where they needed to go, but it's fun to see them get there.
I'm always caught off guard by the receiving line at a wake.
Yep.
Because I feel like there's always at least one person who's just like really upbeat that always catches me off guard.
Yes,
and I know and I know that they're doing that because it's like I think there's a they are sad, they know that you are sad, and so they feel the need to lighten the mood.
Yep.
For everybody's sake.
Yes, yeah.
But it's never not weird.
No,
it's always strange.
Well, and you don't know if you should laugh at the joke in the line, right? Like everyone's very unsteady and unsure of where it goes. And I think it, it's the opposite would be like the ending of this one with Al talking to Cochran about it, right? There's like there's the sort of anger at the situation that Swearingen represents here, which is that Cochran isn't exactly giving up, but Al is more annoyed that he's sort of sick in the first place, and like he's got to fight through this because we need him. He has the great line. He's like, "I'm not going to learn any other fucking quirks of any other doctors who come into the town." It's just there's really good reactions and good scenes between all the characters dealing with that stuff.
Yeah. I think this was a good one for everybody. This is a very good ensemble episode because you've even got guys who don't really have many lines just showing up. Like EB at the meeting is really good EB stuff, even though he's just not really doing anything. He's just kind of there.
Should I speak as mayor, even though no one cares and it's not important? He just sits down and everyone ignores him. Yeah.
Richardson's good in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody's just really, on the same page.
Yeah.
For the benefit of the show.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you think? Do you find the letter, like where do you end up on the letter serving the function that it does in this episode? Whether or not it's like effective, or did you find that moment lands with the show? Do you find that like connects with what the central, I don't know if conflict, but the central idea of what these guys are thinking is going to happen when they publish this letter and what the letter means to them, if it landed for you?
I have no idea what they're thinking, honestly.
Yep.
I don't know what their plan is. I'm not totally sure what they think is going to happen when they publish the letter. Yeah. I honestly left that scene kind of mystified as to what they had all, the unspoken conclusion they had all come to.
Yeah. Yeah, because I guess it ends with I can't remember the specific lines. The Langrishan Swearingen sort of dissect it at the end of the episode about what they think it did. And they're both unsure at that point. And I think it ends very smartly with no one's very clear about whether or not this is going to amount to anything. But at the same time, the other letter carrier is Blasnov, who has more to do in this episode than he's had in quite a while, because he reads the telegram that was implied in the last episode. But I didn't think we, in the last episode, they had that scene with Merrick and Blasnov, where Blasnov talks about how back in Russia, his family was killed by, I don't know what purge or whatever that would have been in Russia at that time. But
it's too early for Cossacks, right? So that's a later thing.
All I know is the Russian Revolution would have been early 1900s, right? So I don't know what 1876 was going on in Russia. Obviously, revolutions don't come out of nowhere, so there's probably the forces bubbling up, but I don't know.
They were always killing people in Russia.
Yeah, the Russians, they're a strange group of people. But Blasnov has that. I don't think we talked about it a lot. I put it as the ending clip of the last podcast, but where he's talking about his parents being killed and the sadness. And Merrick has that great line about like the swells of history just kind of sweep you up wherever you are. And here it's Blasnov gets to make his choice about which swells of history he gets caught up in, and he sort of betrays his oath, and he goes back on it and reads about the bricks and explains that to Swearingen. Yeah, I just thought it was a nice moment. He's a fun sort of side character that doesn't get a lot of play, but I enjoy his performance and I enjoy his point in this one.
Yeah, it was nice to have him actually factor into stuff instead of being just sort of like a pleasant side character.
Yeah, errand boy, because he hasn't had much to do up to this point. I also liked his the ending scene where he reveals it to Al. I think Al says something like, "Would you like to have some puss?" And he's like, "Not now."
Yeah, eventually, yes.
Eventually, yes. Yep. Anything else about this one? I'm just trying to look through the scenes that happened here. Oh no, what do you think? Do you have any scenes that popped into your mind, or anything that you wanted to bring up here?
Not particularly. I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I think it's I like the focus on the death idea. I think that I honestly like one of the strengths I think of the third season is that I think that the Hearst versus community thing is a really interesting idea. And I sort of find myself stuck in the middle where I think one of the reasons that I like Hearst is that, and I wonder how much Milch enjoys it too, is that the battle between them is something that's kind of going on politically, right? It's like, it's the idea of the individual, which is what Hearst represents, and like sort of your own selfish gains and your own selfish interests against what the town needs and what everyone else needs around you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, like obviously both have their place. And I think that, like the modern, what do they call it? Like the manosphere stuff with like Andrew Tate people and things like that. there's this relentless push on like the individual is everything, and that like you need to stand alone and you need to do your own thing. I find myself stuck in the middle because it's like I do believe in the Hearst thing of like you do have to have like your individual drives, and like your own drives are what's going to propel you into something that resembles success, or you're only really responsible for yourself because no one else really gives a shit about you. But it's also like without the town, you end up in places where you don't have a family structure, you don't have sort of friendships, you don't have anything else motivating you or keeping you grounded in that way. Like, I don't know if you agree with that, or if you think that does the show vilify Hearst at the expense of what Hearst might represent as a good thing, or vice versa? I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I think that as individualistic as one might want to be, it does. People don't exist in vacuums, you know. So the application of that only makes sense to a certain point, where it's like, you know, my friend Dan always points out people who are really into conspiracy theories and the government is coming for you and stuff like that, they still own cell phones, you know?
Yep.
They still buy things from Amazon. There's a... It's very difficult and probably self-destructive to try and live that way completely, because that's just not how the world functions.
Yep.
And I don't think that. It's interesting.
Hearst's argument is similar to Gordon Gekko's "Greed is good" line,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
Which is which is seen as like I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but like it's obviously a slimy character saying something, but at the same time he has like this truth to him. You know, there's the
right. Yeah,
I see Hearst is driven that way in his individualness. It's like the.
Well, I think what's interesting though is like I don't know if it's the individuality that's being vilified, because I would say everybody else at that table in the meeting is as much of an individual as Hearst is. It's just that Hearst never asked for help. You know what I mean? Like everybody else at that table realizes that they need to be part of a larger group in order to get ultimately what's best for them and best for the town, whereas Hearst doesn't even consider that as an option.
Right.
And I think that's maybe where the vilification comes in, where it's like you can be as individualistic as you want, but if you are just straight up unwilling to work with other people, then it's not for anybody's benefit, even your own.
Yeah. Yeah, Hearst, not to be confused, but Hearst is obviously a terrible person who's cruel. His cruelty hides beneath that sort of like his pleasantness that he can be in places. And I think that he's obviously selfish and self-aggrandizing and only interested in what his own sort of motivations can bring about. I think it's a good point that the rest of the town is largely individual. I guess the distinction is that Hearst has the emptiness of Hearst's connections to anybody is what causes him the greatest amount of sadness down the line.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, sorry, finish.
No, the town is, which I think is not a point that's wrong. Like the reason that if you become like a sort of like solitary incel character who just lives on like the internet and stuff like that, you're missing what the town brings to you, which is the sense of like other people, both like correcting you and serving as a reality check for you.
Yeah, you become really twisted in your perception of how things work to a point where it's just not realistic and does you no good.
Yeah, right.
And I sorry.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, Al is as bad a person as Hearst is.
Yeah.
You know,
a smaller scale, I guess. Yeah.
Smaller scale. Tolliver is as bad a person as Hearst is.
Yeah.
It's just, I think what's interesting is the show kind of keeps positioning these characters who are very similar to Al and showing you why Al consistently wins. It's because Al is willing to adapt where these other guys, in ways that these other guys aren't.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to the angle that they're taking on Hearst, is where it's like he and Al aren't really that different. It's just that Al has the sense of mind to know when he needs to work with other people on the up and up or otherwise.
Yeah.
And Hearst is, and Al knows when to compromise and when to see things further out, which Hearst also does, but he has tunnel vision that he sees further out, whereas Al has a bit more of a wider scope of what he's looking at.
Yeah, I think that a smaller detail about it. Al sees people as equals, I suppose, and Hearst never sees anyone as equals. Like even in Hearst's connections, everyone that he has a connection with he views as subservient to him. And Al, at this point in the series, I think, is less of like the town mob boss and more just like the town elder, really, who I would say has like deep friendships with some of the people. They've done like scenes where he talks to Tom Nuttall are always nice little throwaways because apparently they've been like the original people in the town, the first two that arrived or whatever. Yeah. And he has like nice connections like that where the only person that we've seen get close to Hearst is he has Aunt Lou, who he views as subhuman, and he had Turner, who worked for him. And those are the only two relationships he's had. Yeah,
I think Hearst sees people as pathetic, whereas Al sees people as even though Al's viewpoint of people is just as cynical as anything else, I think his viewpoint is we are all equal in that we are all pieces of shit, and nobody is better than a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Whereas and that brings this weird level of sympathy from him. Whereas Hearst does have this belief that he's better than people, and so he sees other people as only pathetic, which seems like it's like sympathy, but it's just he thinks people are pathetic.
Yeah, it's weird because Al, to get to the point where he ran Deadwood, had to be a mini Hearst. He was murdering and he was taking money and scamming people and doing all that, but he got to a certain point where. If he had got big enough, he might have just become the next Hearst, but he stopped at this point where he became something larger than himself.
It's actually a pretty interesting bookend for the series, that the show starts with Al lying, cheating, and killing in service of getting his hands on a gold claim. And then the series ends with someone on a larger scale doing the same thing, whereas Al has now evolved past that. Yeah. A little bit of a cyclical thing like The Wire likes to do. Yeah, that's it's like
it.
Star Wars. It's poetry. It rhymes.
It's Unauthorized Cinnamon. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
We didn't even talk about that title. I didn't realize that was the title of the episode, but as soon as Dan says there'll be no fucking Unauthorized Cinnamon, I was like, that's fantastic. And then the follow-up when Johnny says they put cinnamon out for the peaches, and I was like, who the fuck did that? or why or whatever.
And I like Johnny. Johnny has a funny line. He's walking away. He's like, I didn't have any fucking part of that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We didn't even really talk about it, but like I think it's a perfect little encapsulation again of what Deadwood does, which is that the Unauthorized Cinnamon is a joke, right? Because it's kind of a funny thing to say, and it's a funny thing to have them bicker about during the meeting. But it takes on this larger meaning, which is kind of like the Deadwood take on life. Is like it starts off, it can be kind of funny, but it turns into something potentially tragic. Almost like Harry almost dies from his allergic reaction to the cinnamon.
Yeah.
And the cinnamon is the metaphor for death in the episode, which is it's just kind of like this funny mashup of the way that life is, which is it's a bunch of jokes and bullshit and everything like that. But then like tragedy is just looming around the corner for some innocuous reason. And I think it's the show in a nutshell. I think it captures all those angles.
Yeah.
That's it.
Have you ever tried it? Have you ever put cinnamon on peaches?
Not since I was little. I think
I have a can. I might try it tonight.
You have a can of peaches? Yeah.
I think so.
We should have a canned peaches party with the podcast.
Should I live stream the opening of the peaches, and they were peaches I bought for when we went during lockdown. So they're like 4 years old.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, definitely live stream it then, because if the cinnamon doesn't kill you, the peaches might at the end of the day. No, I haven't had cinnamon on. I'm sure it's good, right? And the peach is a weird fruit to me. You know, like there's nothing better than a real ripe peach, but waiting for the peach to go ripe, it feels like your life is wasting away as this rock hard thing is just sitting there.
If you miss that like 5-hour period,
it just becomes water and it just sloshes all over the place.
My mother would buy peaches and put them in a brown paper bag.
Yep.
And then you put them on the thing and lips it. And so I started doing that, but I just kept like forgetting that I had them.
Yeah.
And so I had just like a paper bag full of peaches that just all got gross.
It just melted into a puddle of peach. Yeah.
If you go too early, it tastes like shit. If it go too late, it tastes like shit.
Yeah.
You gotta find the bullseye there.
No, it doesn't.
So like and subscribe to see how
you fare.
4-year-old canned peaches turned out.
They're not like, they don't even have the malleability of a plum. Like you can eat an unripe plum and do okay with it. You can get through it. You might not enjoy it, but it's possible to eat it.
Yeah, if you have to make a point, you can. But
well, the price of produce going through the fucking roof these days. But no, a peach that's unripe is inedible. You can't do anything with it. Yeah.
Throw a window pretty easily, I think.
Yeah. Hit him in the face with the rock. Unauthorized Cinnamon. Thanks everybody for listening to the show today. This is the Something Pretty podcast. We just covered, I think we're over the halfway mark of the 3rd season, so we only have a couple episodes left, Clay, of Deadwood before we are done with the series as a whole. Thanks everybody for listening. You can rate the show on Apple Podcasts, and more importantly, if you enjoyed the content, patreon.com/The Penske File is the best place to support us. A couple $2 a month gets you extra stuff, extra podcasts. We'll be doing we have like 200 podcasts on the thing at this point. So if you subscribe to patreon.com/The Penske File, you can get all that stuff and more, and it'll feel like you're supporting the show. Even if the show's over at this point, if we're no longer releasing episodes on this podcast feed, the Patreon will still exist. Gomorrah might have been called down on the podcast feed, but not the Patreon.
That's the dream, right? Isn't that the dream of like every OnlyFans creator, where it's like you keep putting things out for maybe like 2 years and then you just stop and see how long it takes for people to remember they still pay for it.
That's right. That's why. Isn't it weird that you would have thought that the lobby for why do credit cards expire? Do you ever wondered about that? Like, wouldn't you think that they would lobby to keep credit cards active as long as possible so that people have recurring charges on them? Because there was something that like 90% of people only recognize that they have continuing subscriptions when the credit card expires and they no longer get the service or whatever. They get the notification.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's a security thing.
Don't you get the same number, or am I wrong?
Yeah. No, you get the same number, and it just changes the date, and it might change the little code number thing on the back. I can't remember. Yeah, no, I don't think it does. I don't know. Anyway,
that's weird. Just makes you reactivate it.
Yeah, I once recently, over the past like 2 years, had been getting notices from the service that hosts my website.
Yeah,
saying that if I don't update my payment information in the next 30 days, they're going to shut down my shit. And I was like, great, I'm looking for an excuse to not have this website anymore.
Yep.
And so I just let it lapse. And then every month for legitimately 2 years, I would get an email saying, if you don't update your information in the next 30 days, you're gonna lose your thing. And after like 6 months of this, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, are they charging me for this still? What, like, how is this? If it's out of date and they're threatening me if I don't update it, I'm not updating it. So cancel the fucking website. I don't know. It was very confusing.
They want you back. They're just playing hard to get.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say before we go?
I think I've said no. What do I have to say? Rotten Heart Picks Show on Patreon, doing video nasties. We just did Dario Argento's Inferno. We're going to be doing one of the grandpappies of the video nasties, which is Wes Craven's Last House on the Left, which is a real hub for what became 80s horror, because that involved Wes Craven and Sean Cunningham, who would go on to do Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, respectively.
Yep.
Both of them started off in really bottom of the barrel grindhouse stuff. I think they might even have shot porn for a brief while.
Well,
and then they did worked together to make Last House on the Left, which is still regarded as one of the more extreme horror movies to come out. Well, I don't know if we'll see how extreme it still is, but it can still be kind of shocking in moments, even 40, 50 years later.
It's you guys have done 10 of them at this point. Well, you'll have 10 of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's all on Patreon.
All on Patreon. We've got 2 left after Last House. It's Lucio Fulci's Zombie, and I can't remember what the last one is.
Well, tune in.
It's terrifying.
Tune in next month to see, everybody. Thanks very much for listening. I guess we're done at this point. This is Unauthorized Cinnamon. This is the Something Pretty podcast. We're done. Next week, we are going to get into Leviathan Smiles. And the Earps come to town, Clay, which I'm sure very, very exciting for you. And you can check out
I hope they got Kurt Russell to play.
No, unfortunately.
I know that they didn't.
No, unfortunately. If you guys want our coverage of Tombstone, that's up on the Patreon, patreon.com/Shapensky. So if you want to psych yourselves up for some Earps in the next episode of Deadwood, go there and you can hear us talk about Kurt Russell slapping the shit out of people and hitting them with their horse reins.
You skin that smoke wagon and see what happens.
Throw down, boy. That's it. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with Leviathan Smiles in the next episode. See you then.
John Langrishaw.
Come on, Jack.
Early finish below.
We'd a meeting. I ought to have asked you to.
What topic commended my presence? Reprobates? The elderly?
Fucking Hearst. That took an axe to my left middle digit. Sends for 25 more thugs to take the tool to the whole fucking camp. Why am I fucking optimistic?
Did your meeting find a strategy in counterpoise?
We heard the fucking reading of a letter.
Ah?
Writ by Bullock to a miner's family after Hearst had had him murdered.
Exhorting they charge Hearst with the crime.
Never once mentioning Hearst. Expressing sympathy to the family, respect for the way the man lived. We decided Merrick would publish in the paper.
Strategies some may call ingenious, others merely off the point.
I sit mystified I was moved to endorse it.
Mystified, Al? At proclaiming a law beyond law to a man who's beyond law himself? Its publication invoking a decency whose scrutiny applies to him as to all his fellows. I call that strategy cunningly sophisticated, befitting and becoming the man who sits before me.